Hey, Dream Builders, welcome back to another awesome episode. Today I have Sascha Schlossberg. I probably totally butchered her last name, and as a Jewish person, that's probably some kind of deadly sin. And I didn't even, because me and Sasha are like such good friends, I didn't even ask her what her title was. So you'll find that out in just a second. But she's awesome. She and her husband are amazing. They have a business together. She also is a coach in her own right. She helps people get to seven figures and beyond in a very aligned, ethical, delicious, juicy way. And I can't wait for you guys to meet Sascha. Welcome, Sascha, to the show.
Thank you. I love that you said you forgot to ask me what I do because you're intuitive and you know that at this point I'm always in that weird middle where I'm like, I don't know how to describe it either. So you just picked up on that is all. The usual.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great. Well, as long as it's on the sheet later for me to do the intro, then we're good. So no worries there. But you bring up a good point because, like, in the coaching space, I think that there's so much pressure on us to say, like, what is it that you do? And I think that as we start to evolve as human beings and, you know, as women too, that we're going to find that it's less about defining it and more about like feeling it, right? And
Yes.
so I think that both you and I, we share in common that people are attracted to our energy, and it's like, I'll figure out what she does later. Like, I just know that there's something about that like drives me mad. And like, I want to get in that energy. And then later on, I can tell you what it was. Do you agree
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah. It creates a very interesting oh my gosh. It just creates this interesting thing about like, is it possible that we then really sell one thing for a long time? Like, yes, we can, but I think it creates this fluidity. If people are coming to us based on what they like about us, then it also gives us this interesting dynamic of shifting what it is that we're offering and how we're offering it. And it feels like we're shifting on this continuum, and then the description of ourselves and the work also constantly has, like, when we say continuum, it feels beautiful, it sounds beautiful, but it can feel murky if we're on the other end attempting to explain ourselves.
Yeah. And I think when you try to distill down the magic of what we do into copies, sometimes it loses some of that nuance, right? Like
Hmm.
sometimes, like you can't, and that's why I think, you know, there's been so much talk lately and fear about AI. And you see
Hmm.
so many posts from coaches. And it's interesting, you know, the dynamic of like projection, right? Because a lot of the coaches that are talking about AI suddenly clogging the space are the same coaches that clog the space with what seems like maybe could be AI. I don't know.
I know. I
But
know.
but it's interesting because there's this idea that somehow, you know, regurgitating information is going to take over the space. And it's like, but did you feel like that with Google? Because Google
Yeah.
literally is a curation machine for everything there ever, well, not a curation, but a, you know,
Yeah.
it,
I
for
actually
every,
like that. I like that descriptor of it because it is, in some ways, it's like that's why I think it's so funny that SEO is technically against Google's terms because they don't want you manipulating their own algorithm. But when you search anything, they are serving you a curated list. Like every algorithm is doing that. I have a
well, not
dancing
only that,
child
you
in
can
here.
pay them in order to get SEO.
Yes, yes, yes. So, I mean, it's like the second we talk about the internet, it's like everything, nothing
Right.
makes sense because there's the opposites of the polarities of everything, and it's all true even on the internet. Like, oh yeah, you can't optimize it, but you can optimize it and you can pay for it, but you're not supposed to. And then, but AI is the same way. With the AI, it's like, okay, if you pop something in to AI and you see what comes out, I think why people get upset is it does sound like mediocre copy. It
Right.
sounds like it, but this is why also most people aren't able to grow their business online because they don't write in a way that stands out. Like if you can't stand out, then then yeah, you're going to be intimidated by something that can churn out copy as well as you can. If your own copy can't be differentiated from AI, then yes, you're in trouble. Then you are in trouble. And then be scared or change and evolve. And then I think it's one of those, the cream gets to rise to the top, and chat gpt is, it's not worth worrying about if you're already, because the thing is in some ways, yes, it's new. In some ways it's new, like, yeah, for the first time the mass public has access to large amounts of created content. but there's been software that spins content or writes content for a decade.
Right.
And most people haven't noticed it, but that's why if you go and you search blogs and you'll see a bunch of blog articles that sound the same, because it was already, people have been using content spinners for years. It's just that now this has now reached, I would like to say the mass market, but it's not the mass market. It's just the online space widely knows about it now. But anybody who's been in SEO, for example, or in digital marketing has known about it already. And the majority of the public still has no idea about it. So it's just crossed a new threshold. But just like anything else, when something crosses a threshold, do we have to panic? Probably not.
Innovate.
Yes. Innovate or die.
Yeah. What is it that Eric Hoffer said? Wait a minute. The learners will inherit the world, while the learned will find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists.
Fascinating and completely accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So for me, I feel like the way I use AI, right? Because I'm just going to come out of the AI closet right now.
Mm-hmm.
With technical writing, because I have attention deficit, because I am neurodivergent, I have a really hard time with technical writing. And so the AI has helped me to build outlines, to give myself a framework to fit my voice into. So that's been really good for me. Like when I go to write an email to my list about like, hey, just a reminder that this class is happening, my brain's like, it can't be that basic. Like we've got to put something in there, and it overthinks trying to give the information. Whereas the AI is like, okay, here it is. Now take a couple of little, flourishes and add them. And that's been remarkable for me. And also with like idea generation too, like especially for short form video. I mean, and my husband was telling, I'm totally going here, tangent. So yesterday, my husband was telling me this story about, they did an experiment where they had, and you're probably going to be like, oh yeah, it's the blah, blah, blah experiment, because you know all this stuff. I don't know. But basically, they took these people and they had them clap a song to a bunch of people that they assumed would know the song. And even though it was a very popular song, the people that were hearing it clapped didn't recognize the song. And so what they determined was that when you know information, it becomes really quick that you take for granted that anybody doesn't know it, right? So these people were like clapping and they're like, oh, this is so easy. Like, of course you're going to get, and then they didn't. And they're like, how do you not know this? And it's like, well, out of context, it doesn't make sense. But I think that one of the things that, AI has kind of brought to the table is that there's so much information that we know as being coaches for a long time, as being in our, respective areas, that we take for granted that other people don't just know.
Yes.
And so really going, okay, like I'm going to make, TikToks, like, what should I say? Well, everybody knows that. Well, no, everybody doesn't know that. And if you're asking for a list of the top 10 tips around 3 of those might be things that you're like, everybody knows that, but everybody doesn't know that. And so I think that's another example of AI being something that I think is powerful and helpful.
Yeah, I was on a call recently talking about something and I mentioned URL and somebody in the chat was like, what's a URL? And I was like, oh, you forget. You really do. And so I do think that AI is really good for, I wouldn't use it for creating new things, but for helping distill what are the foundational pieces? What are new ways for me to approach something so that I can better reach my audience or communicate something? I think it's beautiful for that, for naming, it's like having a brainstorming partner. But for people that are using it to create blog posts, that's a terrible idea, because Google can already tell. I'm sure Google can already detect what's AI written. And anybody who's using it to create content, it's going to do more harm than good, because Google doesn't take manipulations of their system lightly at all.
Right. No, not at all. One of the cool things that my husband and I were using it for, we tell the AI to become one of the people in our virtual mastermind, like because like someone that's passed away, and have it speak to us in that person's voice. So it's like, I'm talking to Bob Proctor, or I'm talking to Earl Nightingale.
What?
Yeah. And that's been
Oh,
really
that's
cool.
wild.
And so an idea I had, and don't you guys out there steal this, because it's my idea, but an idea I had was creating a course on how to orchestrate your own virtual mastermind with all of the people from history
Oh
that,
my God, that's brilliant.
yeah. So like how to build that, how to build your own, time traveling mastermind using AI, where you have the different voices that weigh in for you. I don't know if you could do them all at once, but you could definitely program it like, okay, voice A is this, voice B is this. And then you're having a conversation with, like, because if you've read anything of Napoleon Hill's, you know all about the mastermind. And one of the things that he employed in his mastermind, and I think Neville Goddard did too, was people from the past that had passed on, right? Like people like Wallace Wattles, I think. And
Yes.
and so looking at it from that perspective, like having those people in your back pocket, we have enough of their writing that we can distill it down to their conversations.
That's wild. I was thinking about it even from a content creation perspective, just the act of curating the conversation and sharing each answer for a blog or anything like that, like the name that comes to my mind. And I'm like, somebody please steal this because I'm not going to make it, but I would totally read it. Like the Wisdom of the Ages, where it's like a question and then answers from, because it's like, there's only so much time in the day. And you and I, each with 73 children, like,
which only we are allowed to say, by the way, y'all. You cannot tell us you have 73 children. We can say it about ourselves. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Do you also, every time you leave the house, get, wow, you have your hands full?
You know how that happens, right? Damn right I do. And you know what? It's going to happen again tonight. So see ya.
It's like people say it, and every time I just act like I've never heard it before.
Yeah.
It's like multiple times in a day.
I know. And then I just think, but you know what? I'd rather there be more of us than more of you. So you're good.
I'm like, it's just funny. It doesn't seem like that many kids to me.
No. And you have one less than me, don't you?
I do, yeah. Yeah, just 4.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem that much, but I go out and then when people's reaction, I go, oh, I guess there are a lot of us. I just feel like, I come with my own dinner party. And that's our own walking dinner party, really. Just they don't all have the most elegant manners yet, but we're working on it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so with all these people, I can't read literally all these books all the time. So for somebody to curate that, I think using AI for curation of ideas, of concepts, of like there is
so it can do that. It can. So my superpower that I wanted to have my whole life, when people are like, "What's your superpower?" I'm like, I want to touch a book and have osmosis to just absorb it all in my body. But you can ask AI. You can be like, summarize chapter 1 of this book, and it will.
Okay, that's fascinating. Now here's my question, because my
I know there's ethical. But the whole thing is ethically.
Yeah, not to be like, oh, I'm not worried about ethics. I don't mean that. But what I do mean is like the thing about books, because I've looked at some of those executive summaries, and what they don't distill is sometimes there's some books, it's just the knowledge, but some books there's actually a vibe that you're catching from reading it. And that isn't well distilled. Like sometimes I'll read a book and I'll be like, oh, it's not the concepts.
Yes. It's like like Jen Sincero. Like you're like, oh my God, I want to hang out with you. Like never mind all the stuff you're teaching me, right? Like that. Like,
yes. And
maybe
so
not her, but like that.
Yeah. So that's the thing is like, because I can't even think of an example this second, but sometimes there's books that it just feels like a literal vibe and you do lose that piece in a summary, but you don't know.
But when it's the more technical stuff, like Napoleon Hill, like if you wanted to read The Science of Getting Rich, or I know that's not Napoleon Hill, but this is how my ADHD brain works. It matches.
What's the science of? That's Wallace Wattles. Science of Getting Rich. But I'm like, Think and Grow Rich is like, I would love to have that updated for modern day.
It is. So, Sharon Lecter. She did. She was one of the co-writers of Rich Dad Poor Dad, and she is the person who rewrote Outwitting the Devil. And that
I had no idea.
Yeah. So she made a Think and Grow Rich for women that's literally the
Oh.
book, but like redone. And there's also Think and Grow Rich for the next generation. And it's like turned into a
I
chicken
had
soup thing.
no idea. I
Yeah.
had no idea. I have like the version that I bought and I read through like it was a textbook when
Mhm.
I was like 19. I still
Yeah,
have
it
that
was a
one. So I had no
textbook.
idea.
It was totally
It's
yeah.
what it
And then
felt
you get to
like.
the part where he talks about sex transmutation, and you're like, oh, hello, Napoleon Hill. Didn't see that coming a mile away.
I was a virgin, so I have literally no recollection of that.
Well, it's good. It's either chapter 7 or 11. I can't remember, but
Okay.
it's definitely a good read. And yeah, it's
Okay, that's amazing. I must read. I must find the new version of the book.
oh,
I'm
girl,
writing this on my to-do list, which
yeah.
is woefully unorganized right
Woefully
now.
unorganized. I love it.
It is a
Um,
mess.
okay, so wait, so we're supposed to talk about things. So
Yes. I don't even know
so
what we're
I
discussing.
know, I don't either. I don't either. And we just have so much fun when we hang out.
Right?
So Sasha and I, we're like biz besties. We're in the
Yes.
same mastermind program type thing, and we
Yeah.
just chat all week long about how neither one of us has done the homework. That's basically how we relate to each other. Like, so did you do this? Nope, sure didn't. Oh, good, I'm not alone. Like that's how effective we are, y'all. And that just goes to show you that you can be wildly successful in your business with a whole heap of little ones and never get anything done. Like if
Oh
that
my gosh.
doesn't show
And
you that
sometimes,
energy trumps strategy, because I'm team energy, I don't know what
yes.
does.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like sometimes I'll say sometimes one of the two of us will just be completely have it down and then distill it for the other one, and then sometimes it's like the when you're the A student where the score comes easily and you go, I just didn't read this unit at all, but it's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
I'll be ready for the next one.
And
That's
then
sort
everybody's
of
looking at you like, how do you do that? Like it's not
like
fair.
like who knows? Who knows? But
Well,
then
okay.
sometimes it's like we're talking till like 1 in the morning, or
I
which is
know.
3 your
Your
time.
time. 1 in the morning, your
Yeah,
time.
my
3 in the morning, my time. 1 in the
yeah,
morning, my time.
yeah,
You're like,
yeah.
I think I need to go to bed. I'm like, really, Sasha? Really? You say that
You're
now?
like, it's
Really?
almost time for me to start my day.
Yeah. Except it's not because I unschool and so my kids don't get up till 11. It's fine.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Oh, it's delicious. Unschooling is the best thing that we ever did. Seriously, when our kids all grow up and like marry each other, although I don't know, we have too many. We don't have. Well, no, we have enough boys. It'll work. But like they're gonna have the best conversations because my kids are just so creepy. Like they're just creepy.
Yes. That's okay. So my 6-year-old is very into creepy things, and so rather than try to make him feel bad or whatever, I was like, did you know that there's people that's how they make their living is they write creepy stories? He's like, what?
Mhm. Yeah, my
Yeah.
10-year-old is insistent that she's from another planet. She has a whole
Oh,
language.
oh, that's impressive.
She's just a whole vibe, that one. And all my
Nice.
kids, it's so cool. All my kids grew up with like, new age culture or whatever. So everything
Mhm.
with them is like, I'm manifesting that you don't get to sit in the front seat. And I'm like, that's not
So
how it
rude.
works, y'all. Like, we don't do that,
It's not, yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's their vernacular. That's how they talk. They're like, I am going to visualize that I get more ice cream than you. And I'm like, guys, like for real, like can we do
That's
it?
hilarious.
It's hilarious. It's so
That's no, mine are half. They're yeah. It's like they still no matter what you do and say, that's how they use everything. They'll be behind the scenes like, I'm gonna bite your face. I'm like, why? Where did you get that idea from? And then in the next thing, it's like I had them watching Mind Your Manners on Netflix, which is not a children's show, but it's fine. And so then they'll sit down and be like, I'm gonna eat my egg elegantly. You all. So the small humans are space aliens, but it's also such a nice example that we can be anything we want to. We can, I mean, I don't know that you and I are going to threaten to bite anybody's face because we're grown-ups, but
I don't know. It
you can
depends on how I feel.
you can be the person that's, wants to bite a face and also wants to eat their egg elegantly, although now that sounds like Hannibal Lecter, which I guess
It does.
is fitting
It
for
does.
the conversation.
It does.
See, and that's where, but that's also the point that you can be disparate things
Yeah.
and create an umbrella. There's like an umbrella, there's a messaging for everything, no matter how weird it is. You can take two things that sound totally weird, put them together, and now you have a personal brand.
Oh my God. So in college, we did this thing. I don't know why it took us so long. It took like 4 pages or something, but we tried to connect Will Smith, I think,
Yeah.
to, I forget who it was we were trying to connect. And we went through so many, I mean, I didn't even know I saw this many movies. And we were trying to, you don't even, I think it was George Clooney. I don't know, it was somebody, but it was like,
Yeah.
it took so many pages. And I looked back at it a couple years ago and I was like, I could have done that in 6. Like,
Totally.
so silly. But like, we had so much fun. Like, and this is connected to that, is connected to, like, we were just like so excited.
Yeah.
I think the power was out or something. That's like what
Yep.
we were doing. But also, like, it was 2001, 2 when I was in college, right? So
Okay.
like, it was like cell phones were like the little Nokia where it's like you press
Yes.
the number 65 times, you know, and I played Sims
And we
in
were
my
quick.
dorm for like 10 hours a day. So, I mean, that was my life. But I have a question. So when it comes to your kids, do you feel like you're literally walking around with like the worst like skeleton closet people like on the planet? Like, so a couple weeks ago, we drove to Goodwill to get rid of a bunch of stuff after we did some decluttering. And we opened the trunk and the hatch, and the people come over to get the stuff. And in the time it took them to come over to my car, my daughter's like, we haven't eaten lunch today. We've been cleaning all day. My mom and dad didn't wake up today until blah, blah, blah. Like this, you know, my brother like ate a dog food yesterday. And like my grandparents said that they aren't coming over this weekend because they don't want to drive. And I'm just like,
Yeah, some of the stuff that they'll say, you're like, please don't say that. Don't wait. No. And then, yeah.
or like, you know, my kids will say something like, we don't talk about Jesus. We're Jewish. We went to a funeral and they were talking about, you know, something to do with Jesus and the whatever, and going back to Jesus. And my kids are like, no. I'm like, can you just not? Can you just not? Like this side of the family very much believes in Jesus. Like that's their thing. Like that's like
Yeah.
vibe. Like, can you just, and we're not like anti that, but they're like,
Yeah.
we're Jewish. We can't do that. And I'm like, that's not a thing. Like, relax, relax.
That is amazing. No, we actually had a funny. So we go to Christian church. Jonathan's heritage is Jewish. And then of course I believe in energetics and all of it. It's all real. So the kids will be like, actually, funny story. My 8-year-old really wanted to make Jello Legos. I was like, we don't have any molds, and we're at my mother-in-law's right now. So it's like, I'm not going to buy molds, but I let her buy Jello. I bought Jello for her, plain gelatin, and I bought some fruit juice because you could mix them together to make, you know. And then like the next day, I saw free molds, including a Lego one. So I got them. I was like, well, clearly you manifested this. So like, we'll talk about things in that way. And we explained that like different people believe different things. And so, but it was amazing. We were at like this is a number of years ago now, but we were at my in-laws for I forget which Jewish holiday, one of the 3-hour dinners. So they're all 3. I feel like they're all 3-hour dinners. So we're at one of those, and they asked some question about like, and do you know who God is? And my oldest at the time was probably 4 or 5, and she goes, Jesus. And the whole table just like died laughing, because it was like, I was like, oh, this is, but it was so cute because her grandpa's like thinking face, because you know you're not going to argue with or be like, well, actually. So he's like, okay, yes, and then just continued. It was very funny. Sometimes when you see these accidental culture clashes, because we do, it's like we want them to be exposed to their heritage, and honestly, the only thing that's important to us is really that they have an actual faith basis. It is important
that they know that mom and dad are protected, that they know that they don't have to worry at night, that they know they're safe. They need to know that they're safe.
Yes, that there is, and that there's a higher power,
that there's a plan.
Yes. And yeah, because when things get hard and you don't have that, you don't have any form of a faith foundation,
Right.
then that is hard. So it's like, so that's the interesting thing, is helping them create that, but without incorporating stuff that's going to cause them shame, judgment, trying to
And
live
I'm
within
all for
somebody else's
that, but
rubric.
I also don't want, Goodwill to call CPS on me because my kid said so.
Right. Oh my gosh, I will say to Jonathan, I'm like, you can't joke about that. Don't joke about that. Don't want, because I had a friend who was just sleep training her baby, and not even the cry it out method, but she was in an apartment building and they called CPS got called on her. So she was just like terrified after that. And I was like, that's so unfortunate.
I had CPS called on me once, and it was a very unfortunate, awkward situation. They came in, they looked around, and they were like, I'm so sorry that we bothered you. But honestly, it was really good that it happened for two reasons. Number one, because I got over my fear of thinking that like there's this, entity that can just swoop in and take your kids away. Like,
Yes.
not
Yeah.
how it works. But number two, because of them coming, they got to see my son, and I didn't really know what to do with him because, he had special needs, and he was still so little, and there wasn't anything medical going on. So I wasn't really sure how to deal with the cognitive. And they were actually the ones who suggested babies can't wait. And so, which is
Oh.
the Georgia version of like, not early intervention, but like the little, the program. And so he got so much support. And if it hadn't been for somebody calling CPS on me out of, spite or whatever, it was the things that she said were ridiculous. If it hadn't been for that, I wouldn't have had that opportunity to have that experience of meeting those people who then became a crucial part of us getting him to his next level. So I'm mad at her, right? I'm still mad at that. But at the same time, I can't be mad at the system because the system worked.
See, and then that goes, but that's such a good example of this is happening for us.
Right. And it was. And it wasn't about me being bad. It was about them saying, hey, can we help? Like, it's not always, oh my God, you're a terrible human. It's more like, do you need help? And at the time we did. And it turned out, we went through this rabbit hole, and he ends up having a rare disease, not a disease, a rare disorder, right? Because he has, I don't even know if you knew that. Yeah. So he has a chromosomal disorder. He's 3. And he doesn't walk, he doesn't talk, he doesn't do any of those things yet, because he has what's called a manual syndrome. And so his 11th and 22 chromosome like flipped or something, they're imbalanced. But I adore him, and getting him the resources that he had, he's now able to stand, and, he may walk at some point. I mean, he has all the mechanics to do so. God, we really went down a tangent this time. Like, I knew this was going to happen, but I didn't know we were going to go to like, Guatemala. I thought we'd like.
It's fascinating. It's really fascinating. We did, because on the subject of, I didn't do, so when you've done pregnancies, you haven't done the genetic testing on them. So I did one, kid number 3, only because I'd had easy pregnancy, not easy. My pregnancies are like, I'm incapacitated with, however you pronounce it, hyperemesis.
Yeah, I had HG too. Yeah.
And then pubic symphysis pain and like all of, horrible. So, but no like medical, nothing of the internal stuff.
No interventions. Yeah.
Needed. Yeah. So I thought that it was just going to tell me the baby sex. So it comes back and they butchered how they were supposed to handle it. Baby had a 9% risk of Turners. But they told me the baby had Turners, which then automatically they tell you the baby sex. So I was like, that's how I found out she was a girl, which normally we just wait till delivery because we do the home birth or birth center or whatever.
Yeah, we do birth center.
So that's the one time we did it, but it was interesting because then it turned out that it was just a 9% chance. And then it's like, well, do we do amnio to find out, or you just track the ultrasound? So we just paid attention to the ultrasounds. Everything looked fine. But she's tiny compared to the others. So there is that conversation that we have. We go, well, do we do the blood work? Because it really only matters once puberty hits.
Right.
And this is fascinating too. This is why in colleges, when people are doing, when students are learning, even in lab settings about chromosomes, they don't let the kids test themselves. They don't let the college students test themselves. Because there is such a high incidence of people with chromosomal abnormalities and they don't know. And finding out accidentally in a college setting is not how they want it to happen. So because there is, so when I went down that rabbit hole, and you find out that it could have been me. There's plenty of people that never find out that they have these abnormalities. Never find out until maybe they're pregnant or something else happens or they test because of it. I mean, it's such a,
That's what
I think,
happened with me. I remember my mom saying when I was a little girl something about my dad. They checked something with the amnio with my brother, and they found out my dad was a carrier, and my brother wasn't, but they weren't sure if I was. And then I like forgot about it for years. And I
yeah,
remember now it was balanced translocation, and it actually is what my son has. And out of 5 kids, he was the only one to have it. I think it's a 6% chance
wow,
pregnancy. And he has it. And I guess with the next generation, it's like a 50% chance or something. I'm not really sure. Maybe it's just
wow.
with him, but
Because,
I don't
yeah,
know if that's necessarily going to be a thing. But yeah, I'm the carrier, and if my husband was a carrier too, then all of our kids would have it, which they don't. But the reason that we did the PKU with him. We did the PKU
yeah,
with our first child, and we did it with him. And it's because I actually have a friend who her son has spinal muscular atrophy, and
hmm,
she fought really hard to get the SMA test added to the PKU in Florida. She like did this whole lobbying thing to get it added because of the fact that her son had it and her daughter has it too, and she has the medicine for it, so she isn't affected in the same way. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, so if it's something that they can catch something on the PKU and potentially stop something, okay, then I'm on board. And so I ended up
hmm,
doing the PKU with him. His PKU came back great, except that it had a high level of the cystic fibrosis, something like it looked like birth trauma, I guess, but then they obviously
hmm,
have cystic fibrosis, but that was like what the PKU said could be a potential problem. But all that to say, like, you don't do those things, those interventions, because you're like, I'm going to love you no matter what. And then you
yeah,
do them and you're like, oh my God, thank God I did it, you know?
right. Yeah, it's so we opted out of, we didn't do any testing with number 4. I mean, we went, we did the ultrasounds, but it's just like,
What are you going to do about it?
I,
You're not going to, some people would,
yeah,
but we're not those
yeah,
people. So
yeah, yeah,
what's the point? Worrying about it for however many months?
right?
Yeah.
So
And
I
his
just go,
ultrasounds were all fine. Like we had no idea.
fascinating. So anyway, now we're, I don't know, now we're in
Now we're
Antarctica.
really on a tangent. So let's bring it back to what the heck you do.
Oh
So
gosh,
yeah.
yes.
So tell us a little bit about what's good.
Hmm. I mean, the I'm like the longest version, the shortest version of the long version. Um, Ultimately, we became online entrepreneurs because we wanted to do something that wasn't as soul sucking as waiting tables while we were actors.
Mhm.
So I wanted to have a big family and travel and do all the things. Like we didn't have a family when we met, obviously, but we traveled and we did fun things and we pursued acting and had adventures. And so we wanted to maintain that lifestyle, and working online or for ourselves seemed like the best way to do it. Um, just, I mean, for as chaotic or hectic entrepreneurship can be, it's still easier than the stress of trying to ask for off work from a boss who doesn't care, that hamster wheel of trying to please a boss, just so you can make money is was not something that, although that's not to say that I still don't sometimes go, if I got a job. That fantasy after 10 years of braving the wilderness, I can see. I'm like, it's like when you're in childbirth and you're doing natural childbirth, but you fantasize about the idea of the epidural. Like that's how a cool job sounds to me.
Oh my God, you
But
just made my stomach hurt. Like just thinking about childbirth. I'm like, no more. I'm done. No.
so
The
yeah,
uterus is having sympathy contractions over here.
that's hilarious. Um
So
but
yeah.
yes, so that was the starting point for us. And so fast forward all this time, what I am really, I guess, unparalleled, is that can you describe your work as unparalleled? What I'm really
Just brush
solid at,
those shoulders off, Sash.
right? It's that, what's your market message or your brand message, but not in a way that's like, what's your tagline? It's in the what's the thing that makes you magnetic, that makes people come to you? And that can be
Secret
any
sauce.
number. Yeah, it could be any, because everybody has it, but people forget. People, there's usually something that somebody's forgetting to tie in from their past to now that suddenly makes everything make sense.
So
Uh,
funny story, just to
yes,
interject here.
yes,
On your human design, your
yeah.
conscious Saturn is that. So if you like geek
Tell
out
me.
and learn like human design in like
Yeah,
literally every client, be like, okay, what's your Saturn? And also their
yeah.
Mercury too, but their Saturn is their secret sauce. It's like how they're supposed to do their magic.
Ooh,
You can literally just distill it down to that.
what? Okay, I have to look that up. Um, because I literally did. I printed everybody in our family's human design charts, and they're all up on the wall. And then, of
Not
course,
Saturn, Uranus. Sorry, Uranus,
oh,
not Saturn.
okay. I have not looked at them in like, I don't know, 3 weeks because it's been
The one that looks
bonkers.
like a little toilet.
Okay, now I'm very curious. I'm gonna go look. I will definitely look this up because that is like somebody. Usually they're not tying something in, which
Right.
is also why I find human design so useful. Is when people are, for me, it's mostly validating. But
Permission.
sometimes, yes, and then sometimes it's pointing out like this isn't a bad thing, or in the case of you and I've talked about this too, like in the relationship, when you go, oh, you're this way, I'm this way, neither one of us is wrong for it. But just having a language around it can make it easier. Similar, that's how brand messaging is in the business. Sometimes it's, think about like we have these clients that have this nutrition program, and one of the things that people struggle with is the sheer amount of green things, veggies, greens that you eat. So we're like, okay, let's just, but instead of ignoring or pretending it doesn't exist, they're like, well, yeah, we do it. We're not going to complain about it. We came up with a hashtag, embrace the greens, like the military embrace the suck. So it's embrace the greens. Like this is just now we're, and so that it creates humor and connection instead of, sometimes people feel like they're failing or they feel bad for not liking it. It's like, no, this might suck. It might feel like it sucks sometimes, so we're going to label it. So
My
there's
sacrum is like, no, Sasha, no.
you don't like greens, not lots of
No,
greens.
I just mean that my sacrum's like, we don't embrace things we don't like. We just turn them into things we like.
Mm, that's funny. I like that. But it is key for, and it's also key to know the culture of your people, right?
Mhm.
So it can be any, whatever. That's an interesting piece too, is what is the culture of the community, or what is the culture of the community you want to create? And is it internal? Sometimes it's internal language. Sometimes it's the naming of, like, oftentimes people do visibility and then they don't understand why it's not growing their business. So, what are the ways that you could tie whatever your signature talk is about into a lead magnet, into and cross, whether it's in person to online, and vice versa, but really creating a smooth client acquisition process through these strategies and words. So it's not very, it's not like a three-step process, and it's not conventional marketing by any means.
Which I love
Very,
because let's be real, conventional is boring and I hate it.
oh my gosh, it does not work. And that's an interesting conversation I've been having. Because I'm taking one-on-one clients, but really I'm not, my new shift again, because I'm always shifting, is that I'm not actually marketing it. I'm marketing my program, which is still includes Q&A access, and I'm still
Oh yeah, let's
connecting
start
with
talking
everybody.
about links because people are going to get antsy about how they can go find you. So let's talk
Oh,
about
oh,
links. So
just,
we've got, this is you, right?
I can't see it, but I'm gonna assume yes. Any of the links are me. I did, the group is our Facebook group.
Okay,
Um,
hold on,
and
group.
that's a solid place to come and hang out.
That's the group. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So with that, it's like I'm focused on our blueprint. And then if somebody comes in or comes into my world and they want to work with me, but I'm not actively selling the one-on-one, because here's something interesting that happens. When people come to me for marketing, oftentimes there's an upstream thing that is going to help them make more money. So it could just be the language like this, but people often come to me because they're like, marketing, help with marketing. But there is no, I refuse to do busy work. I just refuse. Like if I became an entrepreneur because I want to have kids and do acting, the last thing we're doing is busy work. Even if you want to do busy work, we're not doing it. So it's none of the usual metrics and, like, yes, take a snapshot of where all your stuff is at, your revenue, all the things, but you should be
Right.
doing that anyway, right? So
Mhm.
take a snapshot, get your baseline, but now we're going to, what's the next thing? So something interesting that I found that I was lamenting was I was like, okay, so I thought as long as I get people results, they're going to resign because there's always more to work on. But what I found is that people, even if people are getting results, which most of them are getting great results, um, they're still not resigning. And I was like,
Oh, I
but
know
I'm
why.
okay. You tell me your theory. I think I have a theory, but let's hear yours.
Okay, so as a person with attention deficit,
Yes.
even when something's working, my
Yes.
brain gets bored and it's like, we
Yes.
need to go in a different direction. Like, even
Totally.
if that thing
Yes.
is working and I'm getting
Yes.
results and I'm making more money, my brain's like, yeah, but we got to go do something different because this has
Yep.
now become mundane.
Exactly.
And so I have to
That's
like
yes.
totally revolutionize what I'm doing, even if it's
To
just
keep it
changing a couple
interesting
of
for
little
you.
variables. We call it
Yes.
re-sparkleizing.
Yes. Okay. So that's
You tell
definitely
me your reason.
that's a huge part of it.
Oh,
So I was talking with one of my friends and they classify people as intensives or expansives. Expansives are the people that like if you have a 30-hour project, you're going to do 2 hours a day for like, I don't know. I was going to say the rest of your life, but it's, 2 weeks.
coming.
You and I, we roll our eyes. I'm an intensive. I'm surrounded by intensives. We're going to do it. We're going to knock it out. Either I'm going to do it the first 3 days so that I don't beat myself up for 2 weeks. Most people are going to do it at the end of the 2 weeks and they're going to beat themselves up until then. It's one or the other. These are intensives. So, and I tend to attract intensives. So one thing, it doesn't matter. Jonathan's the same way. If he's getting results, it doesn't matter. He's not going to resign. He wants to do something new. He has ADHD too. That's the thing. He wants to do something new. Does not matter. So there's that. And then there's also the piece that if people are coming to me for marketing and they're seeing online everybody talking about your plan, your marketing plan, and your metrics and your deliverables, and I refuse to do any of that. It doesn't matter if they're getting results. They want their deliverables and they want those things. So after people leave me, what they usually do is hire a copywriter, they do some like very measurable thing, or they'll hire like I'm a huge fan of if I know the person is not if I know after me they need something else, I will refer it. So I've gone like, okay, you should go and do Kelly Roach, which is a super go, do these things. And the funniest thing is when I said to a client, I was like, I think you'd be a good fit for Kelly Roach. She's like, I just signed up. I was like, okay.
I
So
had a potential client come to me the other day and say, "Oh my
yeah,
God, you should come try this and be my guest." And I'm like,
no thanks.
no, no, I have hundreds of thousands of dollars of courses with cobwebs on them of things that I
Yes.
should have done that I haven't. No, I won't do
No,
it. So don't.
no. And there's freedom now and then no, thank you. So, but I will refer. I'll send people out. But that's the interesting thing is sometimes there are people that like you can tell they have a physical need for that. Cool. Here's the direction that I'm going to recommend. But yeah, it's usually somebody who's going to give them a deliverable. So it's a combination of those two things, which I was like, well, that's fascinating. But that's why for me, then the natural, like you and I, we want our work to have results. And then when we're having results, we want to continue because there's a next level. There's always another level for somebody. And you and I can take people through that. But if somebody's I was like, okay, well, that's not.
And I think if we look at it from I think there's some scarcity there for both of us, right? Like, because we're like, oh gosh, if I get rid of this, I already know this person, I'm comfy, like, and it's like, we're almost like telling the universe, please give me a reality where there aren't people waiting in the pipeline. So consider it like if you were a person who trained baby dogs to become seeing eye dogs. You only have them for a year and then they're gone. They're off to their handler and you've got a new puppy to take care of. And you don't get to keep them. You just don't. But you also know that you work for a company and there's a steady stream of new. So I would invite you to look at that a little bit. And by you, I mean us.
Yes.
Like, where is that scarcity of like, oh gosh, I got this person to this level, where they feel like they've got the legs to go where they need to go. It's not up to me to decide if they're ready or not. It's them. And now who's waiting in the wings to come in and get that and really, if we're being honest, and I know this is the longest podcast episode of my life, but I love it. If we're being really honest, we thrive more in that exciting, fresh, new too with them. where it's like that fun and that excitement and that, oh, here's a new idea and here's
Yeah.
something that I can mold and craft and change and get
Mhm.
the aha. The ahas get fewer and far between the more that they start to immerse themselves in the work.
That's interesting. I am very curious about the idea too of
I feel like we
what's
need to
the
have like a whole mastermind call with just me and you, like off of the podcast where we like talk about this. Cause I'm looking at the time and I'm like, we haven't even talked about any of your stuff. And I like want to make sure that we do that. But
Oh my gosh.
final
I'll
thought
follow
on
your
that
lead.
though.
I'll follow your lead, whatever you want to cover.
Well, I just feel like we could literally we could have a marathon podcast. Like we could eat
Probably.
and sleep in this chair and we would be happy as clams. Okay. So
Yeah.
you can't see any of this. So this is her Instagram. Talk about your Instagram real quick.
Yes. So Instagram is just Sascha Does Things, but that's SASCHA. I am.
Oh, it's on the screen. I just mean talk about like what it is and what's there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, just my Instagram. What do you
Okay,
mean?
perfect. That's her Instagram.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And then this is her website.
Yes. What'sgood.co is about to be redone, or it's in process. So within the next month or so, it will be up. It'll be magical, and it's all things Jonathan and I.
And then Lead Magnet.
Yes. So 145 content ideas no one else is sharing, because you don't need a content calendar to actually generate revenue that's going to work. You need to create content that builds your authority and visibility and creates clarity for your audience about what you're doing. And so this is all these ideas that'll help you do that.
I love that. I love all of it. I am so obsessed with all things Sascha and Jonathan and all of the little Schlossberg ets. And
Yeah.
I call my kids the Muppets. So I don't know if you have like a term for yours, but
I call them everything: chicken nuggets, ladybugs, muffins, squishmallows. Like there's a ton of things.
I love it. We like literally live the same life on two different coasts, and I'm so here for it. Oh my gosh, Sascha, thank you so much for being here. This has been spectacular. We'll have to do a part 2 sometime where we actually talk about this.
Well, we're going to have to pick up where we left off in the future, because then you and I both will have all sorts of next level clarity on what we just discussed, because we opened a big can of worms. So
we opened a very big can, and I'll be back to tie up that can with you in a couple minutes. So hang tight. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here, Sascha. You have been absolutely amazing. We loved having you. And that'll do it for this very long, very delicious episode of the Dream Design Podcast with Amy Lee. Until next time, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be safe, and may you be at peace. Namaste.